In this video, we're taking a closer look at Starbound, we're looking at the pros and the cons, and everything you need to know before you buy Starbound. But is the game actually worth playing? Let's find out. I have on Game Creator here, and Starbound is an open world survival crafting game, all about space exploration and gathering resources. Now the game is out on full release for $15, and is available for PC and most consoles. Now Starbound might look similar to Terraria at first glance, but they are two very different games. The main difference is the story. The story in a nutshell wants you to gather keys, and it will require a lot of time and navigation between planets to collect these keys. And to get the keys, you also need to complete dungeons and kill bosses, which can be very difficult. You can also choose to ignore the story altogether and just explore space as you see fit. But the storyline is quite nice and gives you a good sense of progression. Now Starbound is a sandbox exploration game with emphasis on exploration. You are meant to explore and see the universe, and in a way what is structured far differently from other titles. Some of the best things Starbound has to offer is the fun places to visit and a lot of variety of things to do. Also the building is well implemented. But as I mentioned before, one of the things you do in the game is fight bosses. So now we're going to look at the combat system, and that is surprisingly good. You have melee and ranged weapons in a vast variety of types. This can range anywhere between a simple hammer to a rifle or even grenade launcher. The combat system serves multiple purposes. You will of course encounter small, not very difficult enemies all the time while you are exploring, but you also have a lot of really cool bosses, and all these bosses are unique in their style, combat pattern, and can be very difficult to beat. Also Starbound has an incredible crafting system that requires an insane amount of different materials, which is also why exploration is such a big part of it, because you have to go around collect the resources from the different planets. And this also ties into mining. Mining and harvesting is not a grind. You don't have to spend hours and hours and hours grinding the same mineral. It is usually done pretty quick, so the main part of the game is to find the minerals by going from planet to planet and not necessarily spending your entire life just sitting and right clicking on an element. And the resources can be gathered by multiple things. You have pickaxes, drills, and even a matter manipulator. Now one of the differences between Starbound and other games in this category is that Starbound has a storyline. Now of course not gonna spoil it, but it is pretty good. But I do have a few gripes in terms of how it proceeds. So if you bother to actually read the storyline and you engage in it, it's actually quite nice. But the way you go about it is a bit annoying, and it's usually quite repetitive. And what I mean is that usually the story tells you go to X place and scan an item, then go complete a dungeon, and then defeat a boss. And it doesn't really vary in terms of that order. Now the good thing about the storyline is that it provides a good amount of content and a sense of progression. Now you can also get plenty of replayability without it. Now one of the best things about Starbound is also the multiplayer, and the games are exceptionally easy to set up. It's a Steam game, so you of course have an in-game just join your friend's Steam option, and the multiplayer games are also very stable, and it's very rare that you encounter any issues or bugs. Now the graphics in Starbound is fantastic. I personally love how this game looks. It is just so soothing to my eyes. So that is the graphics. The species design on all the monsters is also stellar, and the music and sound design is also really good. So all this together creates a really good atmosphere and immersion, and the graphics combined with the soundtrack is fantastic. Now in terms of replayability, you can play this game a lot. There's however a pretty big catch. The first playthrough or two are gonna be really nice, but due to the order of unlocking quests and being kind of locked in terms of where you can explore in what order, can be quite annoying after a while. So you can easily get 20, 30, 40 hours of playtime in a few playthroughs for sure, but then the game might be a bit lacking in terms of variety. But this is however where the mods come in. Starbound has thousands of mods, and they can alter the game entirely, and the game can reach an entirely new level. And mods you can easily get thousands of hours of content. But we'll get further into the modding a bit later here. By the way guys, if you're enjoying the video, make sure to boop the like button as it really helps out the channel. Thank you so much for doing that. Now let's look at some pros and cons. The first pro is the variety. The game has a ton of different planets, each with different biomes and requirements. Some can be completely underwater, some can be the desert. There's basically an unlimited amount of different planets, and the variety does not stop there. There's also a ton of different species. The normal monsters and the bosses, the combat system are all very different and unique. And you also have a great variety in terms of the weapons. So you can find a weapon that suits your playstyle, and of course some weapons are better for any given scenario. Now next pro is of course the mods, and oh boy, they can change the game so much. I would say this: if you're considering buying Starbound, don't look at Starbound as a game by itself. You have to include the mods. That is just how big of a part of the game it is nowadays. The modding community is absolutely amazing here. And next pro is the combat and bosses. It has a ton of replayability and variety, so I like it a lot. Now let's look at the cons. The first con is the main story and the side quests. So the main story quests are very similar. It's usually go scan a thing, complete a dungeon, and kill a boss, and just gets a bit repetitive after a while. And this also ties into the side quests. They are usually very repetitive, and to put it bluntly, quite boring. The next con is the performance. You might struggle running this game on an older PC or even a new one, it can vary a lot in terms of performance. Now let's grade the game, shall we? The first thing we're looking at is the gameplay. That's the most important part. So here we're looking at the mechanics, the systems, and does the game work as intended. And here Starbound gets a B. I really like the crafting system, the resource gathering, and the building system is also fantastic. The bosses are very unique, the combat is pretty nice. So overall the gameplay is good. And the next thing we're grading on is the graphics, the sound, and immersion. Basically, do you get these wow moments where the game just blows you away with how beautiful or how immersive it is? And here Starbound also gets a B. I really like the graphics here. That's really good soundtrack, really good music design as well. And the final thing we're grading on is progression and replayability. So here we're looking at, does your effort feel meaningful? We're also looking at the story. Now this one is tough because the replayability of the game is really good. Especially if you mod the game, you can definitely get a really high grade here. But if you're also counting in the story and just how lackluster and repetitive that can be, it is very tough to grade it here. Now the replayability with mods is definitely an A or even an A+, but the storyline drags it down quite a bit. So in progression, Starbound gets a B+. So in conclusion, I would say the vanilla game is alright, but the level of mod support is insane. And it has kind of become the game's life support. So would I recommend the game without mods? Yeah, I would. But after a playthrough or two, it might become a bit lacking. But on the other hand, if you mod the game, it can reach an entirely new level. But with mods, you can easily get thousands of hours of content. So for a $15 game, Starbound is definitely worth playing. And I would highly recommend buying it. Let me know what you guys think about it in the comments down below. Also check out the video on the screen now, as I think you really enjoyed that game review as well. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.